Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rebuild Talks with Tiffany. I hope everyone's doing well today. I am excited because I have Kim Danielson joining us here on this episode, and you are going to want to hear what she has to say. Kim, welcome to the Rebuild.
Thank you so much. I'm just so excited to be here. I just love what you're doing with this podcast. So it's a joy for me to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited as well. I need to remind myself to slow down because I have so many things that I want to ask you, so much that I want to know about. But for those who are unaware, could you just give us a brief, history about you? Give us a brief bio on who Kim Danielson is.
Sure. So I live in Denver, just outside of Denver. I grew up here. I grew up, about 5 miles from where I live now. I have three teenage boys, which is chaos, but very fun. And I started my career, lawyer, and I started as a public defender. And then I went and worked as a corporate attorney, and then I left law practice and started a nonprofit that supports teachers impacted by cancer. Did that shortly after my mom died. She was a teacher and she had ovarian cancer, and we lost her in 2016. But most recently, I wrote a book. I wrote a book about restoration and reclamation after loss. It is a story that came on the heels of a home burglary that happened in 2022, in which I lost um, precious keepsakes and heirlooms, everything of meaningful value to me. So the book came on, yeah, in the wake of that burglary.
I totally understand. Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself.
Sure.
I've tried to figure out how to start this interview, and I really wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to start with, but sometimes you just go with your gut or like what you're
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna
Good.
go with what I'm feeling.
I love it.
So I know you recently wrote on your Substack because I'm following you. Like I got to see what you're up to.
Yes.
That it's been 10 years
Hmm.
since your mom.
Yeah.
And first of all, can you just bring her name into the room? What's your mom's name?
Yes. My mom's name is Nancy Intagliata.
I
Yeah.
love that. I
She was
love
the
that. Can you
best.
tell us a little bit about her?
Yes. Oh, she was the best. She was the
Yeah.
best. She's just such a great mom. I miss her every day. She was just like the kind of person that is just born to be a mom. Just there are just like certain people who just it's, it was she was born to be a mom. She did all of the things like just such a I grew up in such a in a home that was just full of love, unconditional love,
Mhm.
and care and attention, and she just supported me all along the way. I have two younger brothers, and it was just a wonderful, loving childhood. I wouldn't change it for the world, and she really flourished as a grandmother. She just, she always said, like, being a grandma is the best because it's like you get all the love without the responsibility.
Right, right.
And so my boys and my nephews, her other grandsons, were just like the joys of her life. Yeah, she was a teacher. She loved kids. She was a teacher for her entire career, elementary school. And we lost her to ovarian cancer. She was diagnosed and she fought hard. She did 9 rounds of chemo and clinical trials and all of it, and dug in as best she could. It's a terrible disease because you often don't catch it until too late because the symptoms are so benign. So unfortunately, very unfortunately, it got her in the end. But her legacy lives on, in our foundation, in that work, in this book, and just also in my spirit. And I see her in my kids, and I see her everywhere. So I miss her every day, but she's still here in so many ways.
So I'd love to know, how does she show up in your parenting?
I feel I have her I have her voice in my head all of the time. It was so, she died when I have twins, and my twins were
Mhm.
3 and my older son is 6. And so that is just like such a hard time as a
Yeah.
mom. Those were just such hard ages. And I just needed her so badly during that time. I just wanted to call her all the time and ask her what to do. I just felt like I was, lost and confused so much of the time. I can hear her. I can just hear her, just what she had said to me my whole life, things that she did. I really tried to replicate. Like, she just loved tradition. She really prioritized family and faith, and I've tried to set those same standards in our family. And then just in all of the ways that she loved and encouraged me, I try to do the same with my kids. And I think often about her. I think, like, well, how would she handle this, or what would she do? It's a guess, but I hope she's proud of me. I think she is.
I think so. I'm pretty sure she is, and I'm sure she adored your children.
She did. They were the lights of her life.
I think so. I want to touch on a couple of things because I do think it's interesting in talking about the rebuild and talking about like building frameworks and building after loss of a
Mhm.
thing or a person or a relationship. I wonder, love if you could tell us a little bit about how do you rebuild, and we'll definitely touch on other topics as well, but how do you rebuild tradition and family after losing your North Star, the
Mhm.
matriarch of your family? Like, how have traditions changed? How have holidays changed?
Yeah,
Could you
that
tell me a little bit about
sure.
that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great, great question. She was like the matriarch, right? So she kind of led all of that. She was the one that hosted Thanksgiving, and she cooked the turkey, and she was a big celebrations for birthdays. Like, she had, because we moved here. I'm from St. Louis originally, and
Mhm.
my parents moved here when I was 8. And it was just, both of my parents are from St. Louis. And so it was just us. It was just my nuclear family. I have 2 younger brothers, and she, to make up for the extended family that was really like family to us, she filled in all of these gaps with traditions, just to kind of
Nice.
get a rhythm and just have things to hold on to. And I just cherish those now as an adult. And she continued those, throughout my young adult life. And then even after I became a mom, she was doing the same thing with my kids that she did with me. And so when we lost her, it was like we were untethered, just everything
Mm.
kind of changed. And I think for a couple of years, I had to just do things really differently, because it just was sad, to do the
Yeah.
same, to have like the same dinner at the same table, just like broke my heart. So we changed things up a little bit. Just the idea of having the same, having those traditions every year, I've tried to adopt those. But you're right, it changed things a lot. We had to shift gears. And as like I'm the only daughter, and so I
Mhm.
kinda had to, like, people were looking at me to spearhead those things, and I am not my mom. I do not have that skill set. So I tried
Yeah.
as best as I could, but I also, it was just more of, like, having a tradition than actually what it was. I think
Right.
it
But
shifted a little bit more to that
and I
and
think
creating
that's so
things.
important. I think that's so
Mm,
important. It doesn't necessarily matter like exactly what the tradition is, but I think
yes.
just having a tradition is what is so helpful, and it makes the family feel connected, and it makes people feel loved in a different way. And even if the tradition is something unconventional, but
Mhm.
just I think for your children and your nephews to know there's something here that's always gonna be. Like, you can count on
Yes.
Aunt Kim for this. You can count on mom for this
Yeah.
thing. I think it's so important. And I can't help to think about, the fact that your mom instilled this in you and in your
Mhm.
family. And also whatever practices you have around your faith and
Yeah.
probably prioritizing your family, like how critical and important that is. And that's a really big part of her legacy.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. I do credit her, with so much of that, with that foundation. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
I love that, and her being an educator is just it's so compelling. Tell me a
Mhm,
little bit about you. Well, I wanna know 2 things. First, I'd love to know just a little bit about how you kinda pick yourself up as a mom,
mhm.
after losing your mom.
Yeah,
Like, I know there is no rebuild after
yeah.
losing a parent, but I'm sure you've learned to cope or to manage. Could you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that grief is, it's just such a such a specific heartbreak. And
Yeah.
losing my mom at when my kids were that old, I had her for, for a long time. And so I felt peace about that, but
Mhm.
I just I'm not gonna lie, like, it was not smooth. It was not, like, full that grief was hard. I spent a lot of time, like, crying in my closet, just kind of, like, in a
Mhm.
ball in my closet. I felt, I had some just anger and just feelings like, "This is just feels so unfair," and I had to kind of navigate through that. It was crushing. It was really crushing, and I just felt like, oh, like my kids are so robbed. They won't get to know her. My 6-year-old has some vague memories of her. My twins, it's mostly just kind of what we told them about her. So it's kind of supplanted memories. But I came to a place of peace with it. You as a mom, like you don't have a choice, right? You just kind of
Yeah.
it's incredible, like, this thing happens and you're devastated, but life goes on. You can't believe, like, that people still are out and they're at the store and they're driving around and you're like, "Wait, this thing happened, and how can you be doing this?" And I wanted to, like, wear a T-shirt that just said, like, "Do you know my mom just died?"
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but you have the kids were blessings in ways like I couldn't really stop. Like they needed me and I needed
Mhm.
to be their mom and I needed to just keep on going. So I stuffed down a lot of that grief and
Mm.
it doesn't go anywhere. It came up later.
Yeah.
It came up in this book for sure. Like I
Mhm.
kind of reopened some grief that I hadn't grieved before, but it took time, it took prayer, it took, friendships and just, yeah, a lot of kind of times of just feeling the feelings. I had to just like give myself a lot of grace. I think, when people grieve, I think the world often puts expectations on you about it. Like, okay,
Mhm.
it's been 6 months or it's been a year or, it's time to move on. You've had your time. Now you got it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that. It's messy and big losses like stay with you forever. You just kind of have to adapt around them and that's what I had to do. But I will say time has like all things with time, it softened things. It softens those hard edges. And though, I still think about it and miss her every day, it hasn't gotten easier. It's just kind of become more a part of me that you can,
Mm.
I don't hold the feelings aren't so raw.
Right.
It doesn't it hurts, but it's a softer hurt.
Has there been anything about the grief process that's been surprising to you? Like anything that, had we asked you this prior to this significant, such a major loss in your life that you would have had a different answer for? Like, is there anything that you're just like, oh my gosh, I never thought that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Yeah, I think it's hard to understand if if you haven't gone through it. I think everyone can have sympathy, but it's really, I think, a couple of things. I feel like a connection with people who have suffered, this kind of loss. Like you just feel like immediately connected. It has certainly like increased my compassion for I
Mhm.
just have such a tenderness for anyone who is going through that, and I hope that it has helped me be a better friend, a better mentor, just a better companion. And I also have seen a lot of beauty, a lot of goodness, a lot of transformation and restoration that has come on the other side of grief. You don't expect that. You just kind of, this terrible thing happens, and you just, for a while, you're just kind of stuck in it. And it just
Mhm.
feels like I'm just like in this muck for a long time. But I have seen some really beautiful things that have happened, that wouldn't have happened if she were still alive. And so I appreciate that. I've seen a lot of goodness, a lot of light that's come on the other side of this, and that's been surprising.
I love that. I love that. Can you tell me, tell us a little bit about the foundation and how did that get started and what was the impetus for that?
Yeah, so that is it's the Legacy for Nancy. A Legacy for Nancy is the name of it, and we started that in honor of my mom, who was a longtime teacher and died of cancer. So what we want to do, she was a big believer in paying it forward. She loved that idea. She lived those values. She would take my kids and have like little Starbucks cards and just like walk out on and just like hand them to strangers. Like she
Oh,
just was
I
like
love
really a big
that.
believer in just like random acts of kindness and paying it forward. And so we wanted to do something. Again, I was like kind of stuck in this grief, and I knew I needed to just find a way forward. And it ends up like, it's just my advice to anyone who is grieving. Like, if you can find a way to do something that is life giving or positive, forward thinking, it brought so much healing and peace to me personally. It really did. And so we wanted to do something based on those values. So my family and I started this foundation, and we're in Colorado, so we just support teachers who have been impacted by cancer in Colorado. We have big dreams for it to go bigger than that, but in a
Yeah.
couple of school districts where she worked and where we lived, we support teachers who have been impacted, either like a personal diagnosis or a loved one's diagnosis, someone who has lost someone or is caring for someone and who understands the fallout of cancer. And we do this work in a number of ways. We support teachers who are currently in treatment we have chemo baskets. We give them gift cards. We just, support them financially in whatever way we can. Every spring, we give out grants of $2,500, multiple grants to individuals who apply or are nominated, and it just is a very easy application if you've been impacted by cancer and you're an educator, like a teacher or a staff member, anyone that's employed by a school in these districts, public or private, like in the geographic area. And this money can be used in whatever way people want. Often people use it to pay medical bills or to do something nice for their family after, such a hard road. But it's been a really beautiful thing. And we support schools, and we'll fulfill Amazon wish lists for teachers,
Oh,
anything we can do to support teachers. So
yeah.
it's a legacy I'm really proud of, and I think she'd be really proud of. Honoring her in this way, her name being on something like this, I think is something she would really rally behind. And it's been a wonderful thing.
I love that. I love
Thank
that. I think
you.
that's so helpful and
Yeah.
probably so needed, more needed than we probably realize.
Yes. Yes. I
Right.
mean, everyone knows someone, everyone
Mhm.
has been impacted by cancer. Everyone has. Either you know someone or you yourself have. And so I think anyone can rally behind that idea.
You mentioned that you would encourage anyone who has lost someone just to get involved in giving back in some way. Is there
Mhm.
any other advice that you would give to someone who's grieving a loved one, the loss of a loved one?
Yes, I would just say be really kind to yourself, really, really kind. Give yourself tons of space, tons of grace, take help that is offered. You don't have to return the favors, you will someday, but just
That's
to,
true.
just to burden share as much as you can and just be really, really tender and easy on yourself. I think we can just, chin up and just soldier on. Unfortunately, it's nothing that you can avoid. You have to walk through it. You can't walk around it. But I would
Oh,
just
that's
say,
good.
yeah, I just would say just to be really, really kind to yourself and go and just one step in front of the other, just take it like day by day.
That sounds really
Yeah.
good.
We think we can avoid it. We think we can sidestep it. You know, it's in my mom's case, she was very sick for a long time. And I think anyone who's watched someone suffer that way, you can kind of you sort of pre-grieve because you know it's going to happen and you can justify it. She's no longer suffering. She's in a better place. And all of those things are true. Absolutely, but you still like have to grieve. Like you can't try to make yourself think that it's
Yeah.
not as hard as it is. And you can put it away or put it aside and just, put on a happy face, but it doesn't go anywhere. It will come out, it will come out in ways that you don't even recognize. And it might be like decades later. I talked to a lot of people who tried to just avoid it and it still came out and it's even harder, when it's unexpected and way after the fact. So yeah, it's like walking through the fire and you can't avoid it. You just kind of have to face it. So the best you can do is surround yourself with people that love you and support you and will give you an armor, but it does get easier. The walk gets easier, gets a little less steep.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure that's advice that a lot of people will definitely resonate
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
with.
It's advice I needed for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to tell the Rebuild family to stay tuned for part two. I
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed part one of this conversation. We will be back in just a moment to have another conversation. And I can't wait
Great.
for you all to hear about this. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Kim.